What's up, and welcome to the Maniac Companion Podcast presented by The Disorderly. Head over to thedisorderly.com for the best in sports and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Disorderly Media, Facebook at Disorderly ENT, and you can find me on Twitter at Nick Rizner, NickRizner. So, part 3. We're going to be covering episodes 6 and 7 of the podcast. Part 1 was episode 1 through 3. Part 2 was 4 and 5. I highly encourage you to check those out first, obviously, if you haven't before, but I appreciate anyone listening now. So, I wanted to start with the soundtrack to the show because I love it. Episode 6 opens with an instrumental that sort of reminded me a lot of that song. You know that song Sail by AWOL Nation? That's what it reminded me of. I don't know if it's, a chop and screwed version of that or whatever, but honestly, all of it is awesome. I feel like music has such a large role in setting the tone for a show. We did a Sharp Objects Companion podcast before this one and talked a lot about the music. Big Little Lies comes to mind. Leftovers is another one where the music really sets the tone for it. And Maniac did a brilliant job of doing just that. But onto the plot, 2 things happened with the drug that weren't supposed to happen. Jonah Hill and Emma Stone were not supposed to be in the same dream together. We know that this happened because a tear dropped on the circuit board and got, patient 1 and patient 3, their wires crossed essentially. And they also weren't supposed to remember whole lifetimes within those dreams. We remember this from episode 5. Justin Theroux asked Emma Stone, you remember whole lives together? And she's like, yeah, is that the drug? And he's like, it's not supposed to be. And then doubling down on this, it seems like the other patients seem to have more singular experiences. Like they're still meaningful, but more singular, less depth to them. I mean, you hear the one guy talking about literally going around killing people with a hammer. That was basically his entire experience. Part of that, of course, is how he interprets it. It seems like the other patients had more extreme reactions to their experiences, but the fact that there's whole lifetimes built into this thing when Emma Stone and Jonah Hill got crossed over, and how that's a unique reaction to the B pill, I mean, that's interesting. And Emma Stone seems to be really taken by the idea that her and Jonah are connected, which is obviously a twist from the beginning of the season when Jonah Hill was convinced that they were connected, and Emma Stone's basically looking at Jonah Hill like he's a crazy person. Now Emma's the one that's buying into it through this experience, through the dream, but Jonah quickly accepts the explanation that it's all a pointless hallucination, because for him that's easier to accept, right? That's basically the lonely reality that he's existed in for years now. Emma Stone basically has to force a connection with him back in the real world, and she does that. He opens up to her and says that his ultimate fantasy, the one that he would choose to stay in, remember in the 40s dream, there was that magical book, and if you read the text of that book, you can get lost in your fantasies forever, or whatever it is. So she asked him, which fantasy would you stay in? And this is what he said. I wrote it down verbatim because I thought it was interesting. He said, I had a plan. We were going to go somewhere together. We were in a car and we were driving really fast. Someone was chasing us. I don't know who. It felt like an escape. I was just laughing. And I had this huge smile on my face. It hurt. It was so big. We were just 2 people looking out for each other. It's stupid. And then Emma Stone replied, that doesn't sound stupid to me. He drops, by the way, another gut-wrenching line in this episode when he was asked about his experience with the B pill. And he said, that movie, It's a Wonderful Life? If that happened to me, there'd be no difference in the world. What's wrong isn't that I'm sick, it's that I don't matter, which is just, haunting. That's a haunting line. The writing in the show is brilliant. Anyway, back to the plot. So Izumi reveals that the past couple iterations of this experiment have gone wrong. And in order to fix this problem, she coded empathy into the supercomputer, hoping that this would get her to protect the subjects within the dream, her being the supercomputer. And it worked, but her newly installed feelings also had the side effect of having her fall in love with Dr. Miyamoto. So now that Dr. Miyamoto has died, she's depressed. She's basically mourning his death. To fix this problem, at the request of the supercomputer, Justin Theroux brings in his mom. Now, his mom is a famous therapist played by Sally Fields. Turns out the supercomputer is designed after her, so that there's a connection there as well. Izumi apparently scanned her brain and basically gave the computer the personality of Justin Theroux's mom. And it's interesting, too, because there's a certain irony there that Sally Fields points out. Essentially, the entire experiment centers around this idea that once you understand the constructs of the mind can be solved. This would effectively eliminate the need for therapy and human connection if you could just take a pill to solve your pain. But as soon as the supercomputer gets emotions, the only way to fix the computer's pain is essentially to undergo therapy, bringing it full circle and sort of underlying the need for human connection in the first place. So they move on with the experiment, and episode 7 begins with the start of phase 3, the confrontation phase. For Owen, he's part of a crime family, and his father wants him to take the fall for a murder. For Annie, her and her sister are in a sort of Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy. So let's focus on Owen first. In addition to working for his father, he's also working with the FBI, wearing a wire for them, trying to catch his father doing something illegal and ultimately lead to his arrest. And his father's a really bad guy, right? He's running this crime family. He's torturing people. His father brags about having a sixth sense for sniffing out rats within his organization. And we see the scene where they're in the basement and he gets one of his people to admit to skimming off the top before putting a drill through his head. In a particularly gruesome scene, by the way. It almost reminded me of something out of a Tarantino movie. It was just a lot of extra blood. The symbolism of mixing someone's brain up was not lost on me, though, right? So he puts the drill through his head, and he's literally calling out parts of the brain. So to have your brain kind of scrambled up, that's obviously representative of Jonah Hill and what he's going through. For Annie, her and her sister are on a journey to a place called the Lake of the Clouds. Now, Annie doesn't believe that this destination is real. She's basically conning her sister into pissing diamonds so she can take her to this place that doesn't really exist just so she can get some financial gain out of it. Meanwhile, she's being hunted by invisible warriors that look just like her. Now remember, this is the confrontation stage. So for Owen, the conflict is between him and his family, and for Annie, the confrontation is between her and her inner demons. Or if you want to go a step further, her invisible inner demons. She's basically fighting shadows. Now the purpose of this pill is to overcome this conflict and undo what has haunted you most. Right? The vision from the A pill, whatever your worst moment is that you discovered in the A pill, the C pill is supposed to rewrite the way you handle that and get you through it. So it's not something that haunts you anymore. So Owen needs to go against his family and choose to be with Olivia, which is something he did not do in reality. While Annie needs to overcome her inner demons and choose to be there for her sister, like really be there for her, not pretend to be there for her own personal gain or selfish reasons like she did on the day that they got in that car accident. At least that's the intent. But we'll have to wait till next time. We'll dive into part 4 of the Maniac Companion podcast and break down episode 8 and 9. That's coming up next. I'll do an episode 10 and just season rewind type deal. And there's some chance, depending on how fast she can go, that I have a conversation with my good friend Monica, who's been on multiple episodes of this podcast. She's watching it, but she's moving slow. So we'll see where she's at when by the time I get to episode 10 of this podcast. But I hope you're enjoying this so far. I highly encourage you to subscribe to the Disorderly Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or Laughable. We're on YouTube if you prefer to listen to podcasts there as well. And follow us on social media at Disorderly Media on Twitter, Disorderly ENT on Facebook. And once again, my name is Nick Rizner. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Rizner, Nickrizner. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your week.